Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into something I think a lot of folks are probably familiar with. The story of Jesus and Zacchaeus, right? We're talking Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10.
Yep, Luke 19, you got it.
Perfect. Now you've actually sent over a few different things for us to kind of look at with this. A YouTube sermon that really digs into this story, the biblical text itself, of course, and even a little piece from Psalm 84. So there's clearly some interest in what all of this tells us about wealth, salvation, and these kinds of unexpected encounters, right? Like, how do these things all weave together?
Yeah, there's definitely a rich tapestry here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to sort of cut through and see what the core insights are. Maybe even find a surprising angle or two in a story that a lot of us have probably heard since we were kids.
Yeah, I like that. Sounds like a plan.
All right, let's do it. So, first things first, where are we? Who are we dealing with?
Well, the YouTube sermon you sent over, it really emphasized this point, and I think it's a good place to start. Um, Luke's gospel often kind of sets up these expectations, right? Especially when it comes to wealth.
Yeah.
And then things kind of take an interesting turn.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we're in Jericho, right? And we've got Zacchaeus, who's the chief tax collector. And that right there is important because he's a wealthy guy.
Exactly. And when you think about, other stories in Luke, wealth doesn't always have the best connotation, right?
No, it's true. I mean, just think about the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, right?
Yeah.
Or the rich young ruler who just couldn't let go of his possessions. There's definitely a pattern there.
For sure. So right off the bat, Luke's kind of prompting us, the readers, to be, a little cautious, I guess, when it comes to Zacchaeus.
I get it. Okay, so it's not just that he's wealthy, though. He's the chief tax collector, which means...
Well, it means he's basically part of the Roman system, profiting, from his own people. So not only is he well off, but that wealth probably came at a cost,
Yeah.
at least in the eyes of the community.
Right. He's not exactly Mr. Popular. I get it.
Exactly.
So we've got this backdrop of, not so great expectations. But then something kind of wild happens,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I mean, Zacchaeus wants to see Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But he's a short guy, and there's this big crowd in the way.
It happens. Can't really blame him for wanting to get a good look.
Absolutely. But what's so interesting is what he does about it. He climbs a tree. Like, this is the chief tax collector, probably a pretty prominent guy, scrambling up a sycamore fig tree.
Talk about a visual, right? It's not every day you see.
No, definitely not. But it shows you how determined he was, right, to actually see Jesus. I mean, social standing, what people might think, it just didn't matter.
He had to see Jesus.
Yeah, there's a real, like, a deep curiosity there. Maybe even like a yearning,
Okay, and then boom, Jesus gets to that spot, looks up, and calls him out by name. Right. Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today.
That's the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. It's a big crowd, probably not a very friendly one, right? And Jesus just singles him out by name. The sermon really made me think about that, the power of that.
Absolutely. It's this immediate, like, radical act of acceptance. Like, I see you, Zacchaeus, and I want to be with you.
And it's not just, hey, nice to meet you. He's like, I'm staying at your house.
Right. Total defiance of, like, all social norms, all expectations. The crowd, they probably were not happy. But Zacchaeus, he's just all in.
And that brings us to the crowd's reaction, right? They start grumbling about Jesus going to a sinner's house. It's like, oh, here we go again. Back to those initial expectations.
Right. It's like, oh, yeah, Zacchaeus, he's definitely the guy you'd avoid if you were, a holy man or something. At least that's what they thought.
So total contrast there, right? Between Jesus's actions and what the crowd thinks is appropriate.
Totally. Sets up this really beautiful moment for Zacchaeus to respond.
Yeah.
And he does.
Yeah, he does. He says, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount.
Powerful stuff. But, the sermon you sent, it pointed out something really interesting about this verse. The Greek tense used here.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering about that.
So it's possible that Zacchaeus was already doing these things, like giving to the poor, making amends. It wasn't necessarily a sudden change in that instant.
Really? So he might have already been on this path.
It's possible. Maybe this was like his way of living out his faith, even with this, not so popular job. Like maybe he was trying to live up to his name, which means innocent or vindicated.
That's fascinating. So it's not just a sinner repenting, but maybe someone who was already trying to live right, even in a tough situation. Man, there's a lot to unpack here.
There is.
Yeah.
But either way, right? Jesus' response is key. Today salvation has come to this house, because this man, too, is a son of Abraham. It's huge.
It is. And it makes me think about that earlier scene in Luke, after the rich young ruler walks away, someone asks, then who can be saved?
Right, and Jesus says, what is impossible for mortals is possible with God. And then we have Zacchaeus.
Yeah, like boom, here's your answer. Wealth, social stigma, whatever, it's not a barrier.
And the sermon called this a positive feedback loop of grace and gratitude. Jesus offers grace. Zacchaeus responds with generosity, which further validates the grace he's received, right?
Yeah, it's like a beautiful cycle. Complete opposite of the rich young ruler who, followed all the rules but couldn't quite grasp this.
Right. The outward versus the inward.
Totally. And it really drives home that point that grace comes first.
Yeah.
And it inspires generosity. It's not about checking boxes. It's about a response to love and acceptance. Okay. Now, before we wrap up, you also mentioned this passage from Psalm 84, verses 1 through 4, which is all about longing to be in God's presence. How does that fit into all of this?
It's a bit more subtle, but you know that deep longing the psalmist talks about? To be near God. Zacchaeus, in a way, does the same thing. Pushing through the crowd, climbing a tree, he's desperate to see Jesus.
So his actions, that physical effort, kind of mirrors that spiritual longing.
Yeah. And the blessing. In Psalm 84, blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. It's almost like Jesus is bringing that blessing directly to Zacchaeus by staying at his house, bringing that presence right to him.
Wow, okay. So to kind of sum up all this, we've got this amazing story of grace given to someone who, on the surface, maybe didn't seem like the obvious choice. We've got transformation or maybe like an inner change being affirmed. And it all starts with that moment of recognition. Jesus seeing Zacchaeus right where he is.
And it throws out all those assumptions, about who deserves what.
It really does. And the sources, they actually give us a lot to think about, right? Was Zacchaeus already on this journey? Or was this a total turning point? It's almost like both interpretations could be true.
Right. There's that ambiguity there. But what's clear is that what's on the outside doesn't always tell the whole story. It doesn't define your worth, your ability to connect with something bigger.
And that's a good place to leave things, I think. For you listening, what preconceived notions are you carrying around? About people, their jobs, their past. How does Zacchaeus make you rethink those? And where are you seeing that joyful feedback loop in your own life? Something to ponder, for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.